All right. So thank you again, everybody, for joining me for this webinar on bioptic driving in Ontario. I am Dr. Anna Juricic. I'm a low vision optometrist. And for those of you who don't know me, I actually practice in Toronto, Ontario. I've been working in the field of low vision for over 27 years, and I've been helping people who have been living with vision loss maximize any remaining vision they have by providing vision solutions beyond often those traditional glasses. And with all my years of experience, I've been able to create a vision enhancing method where I've been able to fine tune and tweak and optimize the vision outcomes of many of my patients. And in addition to that, I actually enjoy speaking about the topic of low vision. So I am an international speaker in the field of low vision and rehabilitative services. And during today's webinar, with the purposes, I want you, everyone who's actually listening, to have an understanding of what are these new rules involving bioptic driving in Ontario. So some of you may have heard that there have been some changes to the legislature, and earlier this year, they actually put the standard in place. So I will be highlighting that. But I'm going to start off with letting people know what are the rules here in Ontario with the Ministry of Transportation for driving if somebody does not have any vision loss, as well as what are the new bioptic driving rules in Ontario. What is a bioptic? Because some of you might not even know what a bioptic is, so I will highlight that. And I'll do a quick overview of bioptic driving, the history around the world, and what is the process for applying for, just a moment, and what is a process for applying to the bioptic driving program. And we're going to highlight what's involved in terms of the vision rehab part of it and any of the training involved when we talk about the bioptic driving program. So in terms of the Ministry of Transportation, the driving rules, for somebody who does not have vision loss, they have to be able to see at least 20/50 or better, either with glasses, contacts, or unaided in their better eye. And this can be with contacts or glasses. And they have to have at least 120 degrees of continuous horizontal field of vision, and up and below at least 15 degrees of continuous field above and below the horizontal line. There are other specific rules for individuals who are wanting to drive a bus or a truck, but these are actually the rules that apply for anybody who is wanting to have a G-class license for a regular car under 11,000 kilograms in weight. But you do have to have both the 20/50 or better visual acuity in at least one eye and at least 120 degrees of continuous field of vision as well. There has been a vision waiver program for people who've actually experienced visual field restrictions. This is usually an individual who may have experienced a stroke, where part of their field of vision does not allow them to have that 120 continuous field of vision, but they had to have had at least 20/50 or better vision in their better eye. And so this has been around for many, many years. So when we talk about the bioptic driving program, you cannot be having a visual field restriction. So you cannot have both a vision waiver for visual field restriction as well as the bioptic driving for central vision loss as well. So it can only be one or the other. And so what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be highlighting what this new bioptic driving requirement is that was allowed in January of 2023. That was actually passed based on a change in the legislature that took place in October of 2020 to the Ministry of Transportation Highway Traffic Act. And this actually happened because there had been a challenge to the charter. And it was actually changed, the rules were changed to accept the use of a telescope. So up until recently, you were not allowed to be able to drive using a telescopic aid in the province of Ontario. But because of the challenge, they ended up changing the word of the law. And the word of the law changed in October of 2020. However, the standard was not in place until the beginning of this year. So even though we may have been telling some patients that the law had changed to allow for people to actually I'm just adding a few more people into the room here. I apologize for that. So we've just added a few more individuals who've actually joined the call. And so what I was just mentioning is that a standard was not in place until the beginning of January. So anybody who wanted to be applying, there was not the ability for us to allow them to have the use of telescopic aids when it came to driving, because it was not yet any kind of standard in place. So that's what we're going to be discussing today. But before I do that, let's highlight what is a bioptic. So some of you may already know what a bioptic is, and others are definitely unfamiliar. A bioptic is a telescopic aid that is mounted onto glasses where it's in that upper field of vision. So you still would have that carrier lens. So if there's actually a picture that's shown on the slide where there's a gentleman behind the steering wheel, and the lower part of the lens is what we call the carrier lens, and would carry their regular prescription. So whatever distance viewing prescription that they have in their glasses would be mounted in that part. And there would be a telescopic aid that is mounted on the upper part of the glasses. And this is one style of a telescope. I'm going to highlight a few of the different styles a little bit later on in the presentation. But what's important is that when you wear a bioptic, you're usually looking through that carrier or the regular part of the glasses. When you need to see better and get a more magnified view using the telescope, you actually have to then tilt your head to look through that telescopic aid, which is mounted above, and that would allow you to have the extra magnification, so you'd be able to see a street sign, a signal light, a car up in front, a person about to cross the street, or any distance viewing aid. So some patients use it to watch TV, look at the words on the screen, go to a live sporting event. But we're highlighting the way that a bioptic will be used with bioptic driving. And this is something that you just can't order online off of Amazon or somewhere. It has to be a prescribed vision aid that has actually been prescribed and customized based on your prescription by either an optometrist or an ophthalmologist. And sometimes opticians are also involved in terms of the fitting of the bioptic as well. And so what are the requirements of the bioptic driving program in the province of Ontario? So the bioptic driving program, the new standard involves the following. It requires that the eye doctor, the optometrist or ophthalmologist, does a visual acuity testing. That's actually where we check to see what your vision is with and without glasses. And in addition, what is your acuity looking at that eye chart with using that telescopic aid that's mounted onto the glasses in the form of a bioptic. We also have to have formalized visual field testing with an automated visual field instrument. And I talk a little bit more about that later on when I specify a little bit more details of what's involved with the bioptic driving exam or the assessment. In terms of the visual acuity, you have to be able to see at least the 2160 line or better in one eye and binocularly when it comes to looking at the eye chart with your own glasses or without. In terms of the visual field, you have to have 120 degrees of a visual field. They have allowed that there can be a little bit of a defect in that central area if somebody does have macular defect from macular degeneration or Stargardt or another condition where the macula, there may be an area where there's a little bit of decreased vision. And so we do have to have the automated test, but we have to see how does that person perform when they're looking with both eyes together as well. And when they're using that bioptic aid, their vision has to be 20/50 or better in that one eye with that telescope that's attached to the glasses. And the maximum telescopic power that's approved to be used in Ontario is up to a 4 times telescope. So anything higher than a 4 times will not be allowed. Anything that is actually a clippable telescopic aid that's not securely mounted permanently to the glasses is not allowed as well. So a quick overview of bioptic driving in the world. bioptic driving is not new. I've been practicing now for 27 years. And for those 27 years, many patients over the years have asked, why can't I do a bioptic driving? I hear you can use it. You can use bioptic driving in the US. Is it allowed here in Canada? So the answer is in 48 US states currently as of 2023, bioptic driving is allowed. New York was one of the first ones, and I believe they were the first with the legislature change. And that took place back in 1977. But there have been quite a few states that have approved bioptic driving really in the last decade. I remember about 15 years ago, I think it was only about 25 or 30 states, and now it's up to 48. The Netherlands allows bioptic driving. New Zealand allows bioptic driving. China, Australia, and here in Canada, Quebec has allowed bioptic driving for a while. And surprisingly, none of it has allowed bioptic driving, and now in Ontario as well. And I have heard that possibly there are some exceptions in Manitoba, but I can't seem to find formal documentation that states that. So what does a bioptic driving assessment include? So a bioptic driving assessment, when I do one, it actually does take a little bit more time. I schedule it as a 2-hour specialized vision assessment with myself. And at that initial training, at the initial vision assessment, if we know somebody is interested in the bioptic driving program, we will try to schedule that 30-minute initial training session with my low vision assistant as well. And that's really important because the bioptic driving program with the Ministry of Transportation requires a certain minimum amount of training sessions. And we have to make sure that somebody seems like they might be a good candidate. We don't want them to be investing the time and money into the program if we don't feel that there's that confidence, or they might not be the ideal candidate. And we're really upfront letting them know the different steps, especially now, because we've gotten to learn a lot more in the last few months. Back in the beginning part of the year, where there wasn't much information that I had to work with. And even at the Ministry of Transportation, individuals that I spoke that are at a higher level were good to admit that they were actually, it was a work in progress at the Ministry of Transportation. And so with that being said, there has been a delay for some patients even getting reports back from the ministry with their next steps, even though we're contacting them on a regular basis. But that hopefully is going to get better and more improved, is what I've been told, as of January, where they'll even have a special online form that I can actually fill out. Because right now we didn't have a formalized form that we could be using. So when I see somebody for a bioptic driving assessment, it does consist of the following tests. Always it starts with a comprehensive case history. I want to know, what is their eye condition that they have? How long have they had it? Are they currently undergoing any treatments? This would be especially someone who might have macular degeneration and is getting regular injections for the macular degeneration with their retinal specialist. We need to make sure that their vision has been relatively stable, because if their vision's fluctuating a lot, we might need to monitor them a little bit more before we really go and invest that time, money, and energy into the bioptic driving program, if we're still dealing with something of a condition that might be dynamic and they're under the care of the ophthalmologist, where it's still fluctuating quite a bit. But even if somebody is getting the injections, that is something that we can look at the bioptic driving program, because I do find many patients, after they've had several injections, there is that stability. They're seeing their regular doctor, their ophthalmologist, for the injections to maintain the vision. So we definitely can still see an individual in that kind of case who might be interested in the bioptic driving program. We do the visual acuity testing. And this, again, as I mentioned earlier, is with and without any current glasses that they have. I then spend extra time checking to see, what can I do to maximize their vision with an updated refraction? And this is what we call that eyeglass prescription. We use that instrument that you might see to the right-hand side. We call that the phoropter, where it has a series of lenses. And I'm going to show another slide of my special technique of how I do things, where there's extra steps that are normally not part of a traditional eye exam that many people would be more familiar with. The next part, which is really important, is the contrast sensitivity testing. This is not part of a standard eye exam. And this is one that's really, really important for me to be able to determine how well does somebody see things when it's not that the letters are really dark black on white or white on black, but it's different shades of gray. Or it helps explain how a person's vision will be on those gray overcast days, on a day where it might be snowing or raining. So often when I say the poor weather conditions. And I'm going to highlight the details because the Ministry of Transportation has specific requirements. If you do not meet a certain part of the contrast sensitivity test, then unfortunately they will not allow you to apply for the Bioptic Driving Program. And I highlight that in another slide. Color vision testing is one that they also want us to do. We need to report what the color vision testing results are. The ministry will actually review all of the information and they will make that final decision based on the color vision testing, if it's mild, moderate, severe, if they feel that that would be a detriment for somebody to be able to have the bioptic driving waiver based on all the other facts. So if you do have a color vision loss or deficiency, it does not exclude you from being able to apply for the bioptic driving program. You just have to actually go through extra steps with the Ministry of Transportation with their medical review committee. The next part is where we evaluate you with telescopes, the bioptic telescopic glasses, and other low vision devices. I always do an ocular health assessment with any formal bioptic driving assessment or my specialized low vision assessments as well, because I need to see what the ocular health is like. I need to have a documentation if I see any areas of bleeding or changes that I need to be mindful of, especially at the future visits, to make sure if there is an area where there might be some hemorrhages or bleeding, I monitor that at their next visit to see, has it gotten worse? Has it gotten better? And I document, and I always like to report my findings back to their team of eye doctors, be it their ophthalmologists, retinal specialists, glaucoma specialists, and their optometrists as well. The visual field testing is, again, one that is a formal test that has to be done with an automated visual field machine. And once we have those results, we have to submit those results to the Ministry of Transportation when they're reviewing all of the information that's been reported. And then if we have that time and we know it's been scheduled as a bioptic driving program, we actually then schedule it on our end to make sure there's time to spend with my low vision assistant to do that initial training session. So that way we can make sure they have an understanding of how to use the bioptic and they get to actually try it outside and throughout the building to make sure they know what to do. So when I do the part where I'm checking to see what can I do to maximize a person's vision, I have a special technique that I've coined the vision enhancing method. I always use this handheld light instrument that you'll find if you are able to identify my pictures. It's a picture of me on the right, and I have a patient behind that instrument that many of you are familiar with called a phoropter, which has a series of lenses. I'm shining a light into their eyes, and that light is bouncing back. And based on the way it's bouncing back, I can determine if someone's nearsighted, farsighted, and if they have astigmatism. I can also evaluate if they have a central opacity from a specific type of cataract, or if there's actually a cloudiness to any part of their eye, especially the front part of the eye, that could be causing some of the impairment of how they're seeing things. In the middle picture, there's a picture of myself, and I'm changing the dials where I'm fine-tuning the prescription of what I found. And this is where I'm actually asking the feedback from the patient. And many of you know the line that optometrists like to use, which is better, 1 or 2? And I know many of you, when you have that part of the test, many patients often say they hate that part. They're so worried they're going to give the wrong answer. This is why I scheduled more time so people can have a little bit more time to decipher, is there a difference? And I'll let you know, sometimes there is no difference. That's because we've come to that prescription, which is ideal. So it's okay if you don't notice much difference. On the right-hand side, I actually have now the patient where they are wearing a trial frame. So some people know about the trial frame, and that trial frame is the part that they are able to have an idea of what the prescription is of what I found. And I have those lenses in front. They look at the eye chart. I block off one eye at a time. Then I'm actually holding special prism lenses in front, and I'm determining, is there a way that I can enhance the vision? So instead of the light focusing at the back of their eye, at the macula, where they may have some damaged cells that they don't see well with, there might be an island of vision that's just next to that area that they see better. And I can displace the image using the prism with my special vision enhancing method technique that I use. And then I'll go over to the other eye, do the same thing. And then I'm going to show them my results with both eyes open. If they can tolerate with both eyes, then I know that the prism will give them that extra enhancement. And it's something I can prescribe in that carrier lens of the Bioptic, or even in their everyday glasses as well to enhance their vision. Now, the contrast sensitivity test that I said is mandatory for the Bioptic driving requirement is similar to the one that you see on the right-hand side of my screen. You're going to notice that the letters in the upper left-hand corner, if you are able to see my slides, and I do recognize some of the patients or people who are listening to this webinar, you're going to have poor vision. You're not going to see my slides. And I always like to have slide presentations for even family members and friends who might be watching, or for those who do have more vision. And I'm happy to actually even forward a copy of my transcripts of my webinar to anybody who requests it. Just put that in the chat or send us an email to the email address we're going to provide at the end. And we're happy to forward that to you as well, or even the recording of this webinar. But what you'll notice for those who can is that the contrast sensitivity chart, the letter in the upper left-hand corner is the darkest letter. It can be a dark, dark gray or even almost black. And as you keep going across and down on the chart, it keeps getting lighter and lighter and fading. And there's a grading system to this chart. And so if somebody is only able to see those top letters at the top or the top two lines, then, and that's their best contrast sensitivity. And I have to test it with their right eye, left eye, and both eyes. If it's only in that top area, they're not meeting the requirements. And if it's 1.0 or less, then the Ministry of Transportation will not even look at the information that we would be sending to them because you don't meet the contrast sensitivity. If it's between 1 and 1.35, the Minister of Transportation will look at all of the findings and they make the final decision. I, myself, as a low vision optometrist, or any of my colleagues who do assessments for bioptic driving, we cannot make the call. The Ministry of Transportation will, based on all the other findings and what your vision is. If you're seeing 1.35 or better, then you pass. There is no restriction that they might be imposing on this part of the testing. As I mentioned earlier, they also require that we do a color vision test as well. And so some of you may be familiar where there's a book with numbers and it has circles on it with these numbers that you have to try to identify. Some people can see it, others can't. This is a quick screener. It gives us kind of a gross idea. Does somebody have a color vision deficiency or not? But to be real specific on the degree, is it mild, moderate, or severe? You see there's a picture on the right-hand side where one of my female patients has a test that's called the D15. It's a series of 15 circular colored little tiles, and they actually have a gradient to the color. And it's almost like you have to actually match the colors in sequence, almost to create like a little bit of a rainbow effect. Based on how they position these color tiles, there's a grading system that I can then document on a report. It will let me know if you have normal vision, where there's no color defect whatsoever, you got all 15 correct. If you have a mild defect, moderate defect, or severe defect. And as I said earlier, the ministry wants to have this result. If somebody has that moderate or severe defect, they'll look at all the findings. They'll also even look to see, have you previously held a driving license in Ontario? Did you have a clean record? They'll look at all of that. So it's up to the Ministry of Transportation to make the final decision. So the assessment with the telescope or the bioptic, it's recommended that we first even can show you a quick handheld telescope that is positioned in front of the eye. So we can even determine if you have both eyes seeing about equally well. Is one eye better than the other? Do you have a dominant eye? To just quickly show you what the spotting is like. But most of it, and this is actually shown in the picture of one of my patients on the top part, down on the bottom of the screen with the pictures, you'll see that I actually have one of my female patients, and I'm adjusting one of the bioptics in front of her, where we're actually adjusting it, showing her how to adjust it so she can focus it, because this is actually one that has a manual focus. So right now they do not allow you to use an auto-focusable telescopic aid. It has to be one that you have the ability to do manual focusing if it is one that does have a focusing capability. And so I'm showing her how to do that. She's looking at the eye chart to see how far down she can see on the eye chart. And the picture on the right side is one that has the bioptic, where the patient is having a fixed telescopic aid where it's a 2.2 times. So there is no way of adjusting. It's always set for infinity at 2.2 times. The maximum that you can have in a bioptic telescope is a 4 times telescopic power. This can be mounted, when we talk about telescopes, it can be mounted in right eye, left eye, or both eyes. So the visual field testing that I mentioned earlier has to be an automated visual field test. For any of you who've had this before, this is where you're putting your chin in this instrument. You're looking almost into a big dome. There's flashing lights off to the side that show up randomly, and you have to press a button every time you think you see a light off to the side. They specifically are requesting the 120 degree visual field test, as well as one that's called the binocular Esterman test, which you look with both eyes. And it gives us an idea if you have at least 120 degrees of a visual field, and to see that if you do have a defect, is it immediately in the center, or is there other areas that have a defect? They also look at the reliability of the testing as well. So there are 2 main versions that they do approve of. One is the Humphreys visual field test. This is where there's a random dot of light that appears in different areas and you have to press a button. They also have approved the Kinetic Octopus automated visual field test. This one I like as well. Many of my patients who are going through the Bioptic Driving program, I actually had requested that they get this test done, where I have to refer out. Many clinics don't have this version. This one, actually, the light will start moving from the side, and you have to identify when you see it, and also if you find that you're not seeing it anymore. So it's actually moving, and you're pressing the button every time you think you see it. So we always recommend, as soon as you think you see it, you need to press the button. And this report is sent off to the ministry, and they will actually review it when they're making their final decisions as well. And then I mentioned that we have the pre-telescopic training that we do with with my vision assistant. The top picture shows my low vision assistant, Daniela, who does the in-person training with one of my patients. And we actually have her take the patient around and look at different things in the office. We'll have her look and take them around in the building itself, look at different signs, the directory, different signs on doors, and we also have them go outside. Most of the training I actually prefer, as long as weather is permitting, to be outside, because our office is located on Bloor Street in Toronto. Anybody who's familiar with Bloor Street, it is a busy street, so there are many cars always moving back and forth. We're fortunately just very close to a signal light, and so we'll have Daniela take our patient to look and see as the light is changing, tell us what color it is. We also have them look at the countdown that's often used as people are walking to let us know what they're seeing. We'll have them spot different words that might be on a passing vehicle, if it's a larger truck or a vehicle. The bottom picture actually shows one of our patients. The Starbucks is just the next block over. So she'll actually take them into Starbucks to show the patient that you can also use it to look at the menu when you're behind a counter. So just so they have that familiarity that you can actually change the focus, look at the different distances, make sure it's focused for the signage when they come back out of the Starbucks. Look at the signs of some of the storefronts that are at some of the stores along Bloor. So we'll have her show them how to do the quick spotting and scanning. And so the dip and pick and focusing method that we use. When you're using a bioptic for driving, because some of you might be thinking, this is really strange. Like, am I how do you use this device behind the wheel of a car? I can't be looking through something that's magnifying everything 4 times. So that means that something that appears that is 10 feet away or 40 feet away, it'll actually appear like it's 10 feet away. So it looks a lot bigger and closer and more magnified. And you might be concerned that you'll be thinking that every car is really close and you'll want to be braking all the time. So with a bioptic, what you have to know is that when you're using a bioptic, you're only looking through the bioptic about approximately 5 to 10% of the time. Mostly in the picture on the left-hand side, you see the gentleman. He's looking through that carrier lens. And through that carrier lens, he is able to actually see, but when he needs to see a sign, the signal, not sure if a person's about to cross the street, then he actually dips his chin, looks through the telescope, and that makes everything bigger and closer. So a candidate has, if they have passed all the required tests, what's next in the bioptic driving program? So we want to finalize what is the best bioptic style for them. And then remember, I said it could be that it's mounted on the right eye, left eye. Is it for both eyes? What type of bioptic is it? So on the top right-hand picture here, I have the fixed 2.2 times that we've done with some of our patients. The bottom part of the lens is a carrier lens, so that's what they're looking most of the time, but they dip to look through the top. The bottom 2 pictures are 2 of the variable focus ones. The one right on the bottom is a 3 times from Occutech, and the one at the top is a 4 times. And this is actually mounted, so it's actually focusing only in front of one eye. So this is ideal for individuals who need more magnification, that aren't getting that 20/50 with a 2.2 times, but we need more magnification. So we're going to go either with the 3 times or the 4 times, and it's mounted in front of their better seeing eye. Many people are asking, well, what is the cost of bioptics? So bioptics, they're customized. They come from the US. On average, based on what lenses we might put in there, what coatings we might put. Is it just for single vision for distance? Is it a bifocal? Is it a multifocal? And we really have to be kind of cautious to put that extra reading power, because there might not always be enough room for that full reading power. So we want to be cautious about that with some of the frame selections. But any of the coatings, is it a transition lens? So on average, they're between $2,200 and $3,600 based on the bioptic and the lens design. In Ontario, if you meet the qualifications, and usually if you're applying for this program, you'd be able to be eligible for the assistive devices program if we can get the approval through the ADP or assistive devices program. You need a valid OHIP card for this, and they'll also review if you've actually used a program and how long ago you would have used the program, and they will cover $1,100 max for the bioptic if somebody is not receiving ODSP or social services. If they are on the ODSP or one of the other social service programs like Ontario Works, they'll cover a maximum of $1,466.66. Unfortunately, these prices have not increased in 24 years. We spend that time of counseling. We want to make sure that if we're going to be recommending this program, that the patient knows what to be expecting. And with a bioptic driving program, they want you to have had your bioptic where you've been using it around the house, at work, school, as a passenger, an active passenger in the car, going to sporting events. You need to have used it for at least 3 months. So they want to know the dispense date of when you've had it and how many trainings you've had. And they want to have you have to have at least 3 to 5 in-office trainings for the ministry for this program. And in terms of how long it takes for a bioptic, because they are customized, at first we were saying 4 to 8 weeks. Lately, it's been 6 to 8 weeks to get it. The bioptic has to have a head strap that comes with it when you're using it in the car. And like I said, with the training, we're showing you how to do the spotting, scanning, and the tracking with it. We give you those activities to do at home where you're watching TV. We've had patients who found that they're using it to look at the computer, going to sporting events. So we want you to use it actively, get familiar with it. And when we say actively, we want you to also be walking and spotting quickly, and then you're back up. You don't look at the ground specifically through the telescope because the ground's going to look bigger and closer. So if you're wanting to look as you walk, Forward, yes, but not to look down at the ground, because that ground's going to look bigger and closer. We don't want you to have that illusion that the ground is much closer and you feel like tripping and falling. Because remember, it's always safety first. Reporting to the ministry. So for myself, at the initial visit, if we think we're going to be applying for the Bioptic program, if someone is a previous driver, their license has been suspended or they're not meeting the requirements and I have to send a report, I send a report letting the ministry know they don't meet requirements. However, we are applying for the Bioptic driving program. They will send a letter to the candidate letting them know that they received my report. Then they'll actually specify all the things that they require. And that's where you've had your Bioptic. It's been 3 months. You've had all the training. And then after that, I have to send all that information with all the test results back to the ministry after you've had the Bioptic for at least 3 months. And then you're going to get a letter back from the ministry once they review it. In terms of somebody new, I have to actually, at that initial visit, if we're thinking about the Bioptic driving program, send a report to the ministry saying, this patient does not meet vision requirements, even though they've never driven. You have to be in their system. So then you're going to get a letter letting you know you don't meet vision requirements. You're denied a license. However, your doctor has sent information. We want to be applying for the Bioptic driving program. And they'll again tell you these are the requirements that your doctor needs to provide us. Once you have had your device for that 3 months, then you're going to be getting, once we report that back to the ministry, you're going to get a letter back from the ministry saying, okay, you've had your device for 3 months. Now you're ready to go and do your G1 at the service center for the driving test. So you have to actually do that written test. So I tell my patients, if you've never had a license in Ontario, start studying the book. Know the rules of the road. If you can't pass the written test, they will not give you the ability to even apply for the Bioptic driving. In terms of the next step, you have to have passed the written test, indicating you know the rules of the road. But the reason you can't write the G1 any earlier is that if you go to the driving test center, the first test they're going to have you do is the vision. You're going to fail. They're going to say, sorry, you can't do your written because you've actually failed. You have to take this letter to your optometrist. That's normally the standard that's done if somebody doesn't have an eye condition. So many of the people at the desk aren't even aware of all the steps of the Bioptic driving program. That's why I'll send that report, or my colleagues who do the Bioptic driving will do that as well. So once you get that final letter from the ministry to say, okay, you've passed all the vision requirements, you have your device. Now we feel comfortable. We want you to now have a functional assessment. This is now done at a government-approved driving assessment center. Unfortunately, it was originally promised that we'd have a few different testing centers throughout Ontario. Unfortunately, we only have one still currently that is fully licensed for this part of the Bioptic driving program, and that's actually the Skill Builders Assessment Center in Barrie. I keep hearing there will be more testing centers, satellite clinics at the beginning of 2024. As soon as I know, we'll actually even have that posted on our website as well. So you would actually have to go there, and you would actually, if you're a previous driver, you might have the ability right then at that first assessment to do an in-office assessment with your occupational therapist. And then they're going to have you go and do, if they feel comfortable with the way you're using the Bioptic based on all the training you did, then they're actually going to have you do an in-car session with the occupational therapist sitting in the back and a driver instructor who's in the car. It has to be their car because it's one of the cars that have the brake on the right-hand side for the driver instructor. This assessment normally takes about 2.5 hours. About 1.5 hours is done in office and about an hour in the car. There is a cost incurred for this. It's approximately $785 for this one if you've been a previous driver. Based on how you did, how confident they were of your abilities, they will let you know if you require some in-car training sessions. I've had some patients who've had to have about 3 driving instructions, and then they can go for a reassessment, which is not that full cost again, with again the occupational therapist and the driver instructor. If you are a brand new driver, that's a little bit different. For brand new drivers, once you got that G1 and now you got all the information, the ministry is happy with all the reporting I've sent to them, you've passed the G1, they'll send you a letter to say, now you can go to this government approved testing center, same one that's available right now, currently is the one in Barrie. They will have you do an in-office assessment to see how comfortable you are. You've never driven before. So my understanding is you now have to do driving instructor sessions with a driver instructor and the occupational therapist in the back. This is normally, my understanding, at least 10 sessions, and they're $140. So very similar to my daughter who, she's 16, she's going for her driver's testing. So when we do with a driver's instructing school, they charge every time she's in the car unless you get a package. Unfortunately, there's no packages for people with a Bioptic driving program. You have to be using the government-approved testing center. And then once you pass that, then they send all the information to the ministry. And same thing for previous drivers. The Functional Assessment Center sends all the information to the ministry. They review everything. And then they're the ones at the ministry who will send you a new license. And that new license will have a restriction code with a special letter on the front card of your driver's license indicating that you have a Bioptic waiver program restriction. And the caveat is that you have to have a yearly vision assessment. So again, you'd have to see someone like myself where we check the visual acuity, make sure you're still meeting those requirements, the contrast sensitivity, the visual field testing. And that is the process with this new Bioptic driving program in Ontario. I know I covered a lot, and we had it originally until 4 o'clock. We've extended a little bit in terms of to allow a little bit of question time because we were afraid we'd actually be getting right to the end. So I do have about a few minutes that I can actually take some of the questions that have been coming through that Daniela has been letting me know. So I have here a question: what will be the age range for candidates who want to drive with Bioptics in the province of Ontario? My understanding is that the Ministry of Transportation will look at all of the information. So I have to confirm, but I don't remember seeing there being a restriction in terms of currently you have to be 16 years of age to apply to drive in Ontario. So I will finalize that question to make sure, because this is so new that there has actually been really very little information that's even been provided to us, the low vision optometrists who do the assessments. So I have to see if there was actually a restriction. Are they wanting these individuals to be older or not? So I will get that question confirmed. But I think it's safe to say 18 and above. I just have to see if 16 is the minimum age, like in anybody who's trying to get their traditional driver's license. So when we talk about the color vision test, which is required, I have always been a fan of the D15 test because, like I said, it lets me know, is it mild, moderate, or severe? You can get the Ishihara test, that's one with the color, the book and identify. If you pass that test, perfect. We know there's no color defect. If you actually fail it, then really whoever's doing that test should be doing the D15. So it can be graded mild, moderate, or severe. So that way the ministry really has that extra detail. So someone's asking, is this a high-tech or low-tech vision aid? And I think this question is specific to the assistive devices program, because we have two categories when we're applying for the assistive devices program. And it actually falls under low tech because it's actually specialized glasses. So if somebody has accessed high tech with computers or CCTV or digital magnifiers with large screen, that does not prevent you from being able to access low tech. But you have to see a low vision authorizer or low vision optometrist or specialist like myself, or an ophthalmologist who does low vision as well, to be able to apply for that. So another question, where can we look up these regulations? I'm having difficulty finding them online, and where can we find application forms? The reason is there are no formal forms that you can actually find, unfortunately, online, because they're actually working on it. The last conversation I had with somebody high up at the Ministry of Transportation was really good to let me know that there's been a bit of a delay because they had to have it all programmed with their IT from the government. And they had other special programs that were actually ahead of doing this one. My understanding is that they were hoping to have a formal Bioptic Driving Waiving Program form for us wanting to apply. And that, when I say us, it's our low vision optometrist and ophthalmologist sometime in November. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that that is when it's going to come through, because right now I've just been sending reports. I use the original driving report form when I send somebody, I send a report saying somebody doesn't meet requirements. And that is what I've been sending, and plus formal documented reporting as well. Unfortunately, all of these forms, there is charges when it comes to sending out these forms. That's depending on where it is in terms of the assessment, that initial assessment, we have it incorporated within the fee. Then there are some other ones afterwards as well, just to be aware of. Every clinic might do it a little bit differently. Let's see, all the updated information about the Bioptics we will be posting as it comes through under the Bioptic tab in my website. So you're going to find any added information. So if you want to be kept informed of what's kind of happening, check our website periodically, because that's where we are going to keep any of the information. So especially that part about the age restriction, I'll have it there as well. And as we get more information, I'll be posting it to the newsletter. So those individuals who don't know about it, I send out a newsletter every 1 to 2 weeks between myself and Daniela, my marketing social media guru. And it's always about something related to vision. And this is how many of you actually heard about this Bioptic Driving webinar, was because we posted it to our newsletter group. We wanted to keep it small because I wanted to navigate this whole webinar and see the information. As soon as I get more, I'll be doing more of these webinars as well. Let's see. So one of the things that we had found that I'm not sure if it was a question or a statement. Yeah, it was a question. There's no commitment made to number of centers that can conduct this assessment. Is it still in the pilot phase? Yes, somebody's asking in terms of the assessment centers. There's not been the amount committed. Part of it is they have to actually go through special training. That they actually have to be approved through the Ministry of Transportation, that these driving assessment centers have met all the requirements that are required. I did hear from one of the centers that does the visual field assessments, and they've been doing it for years. They opted not to go ahead as of yet with a bioptic driving assessment. And they were just concerned in terms of making sure is there any kind of liability issues that they would have. So I think that's where there's been some delays, because even these assessment centers that do other types of rehab assessment when people have medical issues, they just want to see also, with it being such a new program, are there any liabilities from their end? And so that's probably one of the reasons that it has not expanded very much as of yet. So hopefully that's going to change soon. So there was a question in terms of the bioptics with nighttime driving. This is going to be something that some of the candidates who are applying for the bioptic driving program, based on their results on the contrast sensitivity, visual acuity, and on color vision testing, they might have a restriction where they might have a limitation of when they are able to use the bioptic, because if they're in that middle zone with the contrast, where I said that 1.0 to the 1.35, I wouldn't be surprised that the Minister of Transportation will put a restriction of you're not able to use it for nighttime driving, because there might be more issues at that point in time. So the ministry makes all of those final recommendations if they will put any additional restrictions to the way your bioptic driving waiver is positioned on your driver's license, and they will keep you informed about that. So I hope this has been insightful to at least have a better understanding. What is bioptic driving? Is it something worthwhile for yourself, a loved one? It's something that you really have to look into, and you have to wonder, is it actually worth, the time, the money, the commitment? You do know that you'll have to be checked every year. And when I choose a telescope, I on purpose am recommending the ones that I think will allow my patients to have a better chance of being able to use their bioptic for years to come. So instead of getting them to only see 2050, I want to opt to one of the bioptic aids that get them down to 2025, 2020, 2030, as opposed to just meeting the vision requirements. So if you have any questions, by all means, send it to our email address at info@drlowvision.com. If this is something that is of interest to you, you have some questions and you prefer to even have them answered over the phone, please feel free to call my office. My assistants, Siobhan and Daniela, are more than happy to answer your questions. Sometimes we find we sometimes get a lot of phone calls, so sometimes it's difficult to get back to some of the messages that are left within a day or two, so it might take a little bit longer. It's sometimes easier just to even forward off an email and they will respond back with an email. Especially if it's something that it's a question that we often get, because we do have a lot of, we can send a prearranged document that has a lot of the most frequently asked questions where it's actually on that document, and we are happy to forward it to you. So you can definitely reach us through our email. Go on our website if you want to get that newsletter on that weekly basis. By all means, just sign up on the website and you'll be able to do so. And those are the links that are accessible for the newsletter and to subscribe. And also, Daniela was good to let me know that she actually just put it onto the chat. So some of you might be able to see on the chat where it has the links that you can just go onto the link, and that will bring you right to the website, and you're able to fill it out with your information, and we'll add you to our subscriber list, and we'll keep you informed. And it's not just about bioptic driving that I'll keep you informed. Anything related to vision, I'm always constantly learning, growing. I'm listening to many different webinars, going to conferences, and I love keeping my patients informed of what's new. What am I learning? What is out there that might help maximize their vision, maintain and preserve their vision, so that way they can be informed and they can make choices that sometimes I know my colleagues, especially my ophthalmologist colleagues, who they're very busy. They have so many patients they see. They don't have the time to be able to spend and answer all the questions. And so they're not always being told of all these different options. So this is why we created the newsletter that we've been doing now for the past year. Any of the previous newsletters, some of the general topics you'll find under the blog section of our website. Danielle is really good at updating it frequently. And so that's a way that you can actually see what we've actually posted over the past year as well. But again, thank you so much for your time. I hope you found this informative. And as I learn more with the program, and as we have more of our patients, we have over a dozen patients that are in the program at different stages, I'm going to share their success stories. I'll share what did they tell me about the process? What was the functional assessment test like? So that way you'll have information, because as many of you, and some of you have actually commented, there's little information out there online that is very formal for you to find out about the bioptic driving program here in Ontario. So that's why I wanted to finally let you know, now that we've been able to have quite a few of our patients in different aspects and stages of this bioptic driving waiver program. So I could at least speak more so based on what I've learned over the last few months. So again, thank you so much. Have a good day. Be well.